All right. So the last one, integrating lessons from a partner force, if any. I thought initially, and I want to apologize to start this one off. I thought this was a really dumb question when I first saw it. I was like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean integrating things from a partner force? But then I thought about it, and I actually have a really good example of how we've done this before. And I will tell this story. And if something jogs your memory, Peaches, you can hop in with your own. So we were working in Iceland. We were doing the NATO air policing mission. Essentially, Iceland doesn't have its own military. The Russians are constantly incurring on airspace. So there is a reoccurring, it's like a deployment, but there's a reoccurring thing where fighters from a different country take like 4-month shifts and they go sit in NATO. And then the Russians fly their little bombers in, and then we go interdict them, and then everybody flies and they go home, right? So if there's people flying, there has to be a PJ team there. So there we were. And in some of our training, we were working with the Icelandic Coast Guard. These guys were unreal. Their pilots were some of the best that I've ever seen in the world. Their rescue swimmers were hard as nails. Like, everything there is done in a dry suit. It's freezing. The ocean is scary. It's big. So we were working with these guys, and we were kind of sharing TTPs. And when you're a rescue swimmer and you're ready for pickup, essentially you're taught to wave your hand, right? So we're like, yeah, we wave our hands. And one of their rescue swimmers looked at us and goes, oh, well, you know what we do, because it works really well out here, is you slap the water. Like, instead of waving, you slap the water as hard as you can, and you make foam around you. I was like,
that's genius.
I was like, hold on. So when we were on the helicopter, I stayed on purposely. I was like, hey, I want to see this. Like, we had two of our dudes jumped in, and we're out there swimming. And then when they were ready, just one dude started slapping the water. You could see that from forever away, because like there's waves and there's ocean and there's white water, and as the rollers, and it depends on wind and stuff. So whatever, but the small disturbance of a swimmer just slapping that water, it's completely out of place for the environment. It does not look like rolling waves. It does not look like, sea spray. Even in choppy water, you could see this. It immediately, like, it was like seeing movement in the woods. Like, when you walk in the woods and you see movement, you're like, hunters know this
right away. I mean, that's what our eyes are made for.
Exactly. And it was the most intuitive thing. And I was like, I cannot believe that. And we came back to Vegas, and the group of us that was there, we were like, hey, check this out. Watch this. And sure enough, everybody that has ever done it, they're like, that is so amazing. That's a great way to call for pickup, is slap in the water. So that story is a good lesson that I learned from a partner force, the Icelandic Coast Guard. That was awesome. I don't know if you have a story like it.
Not one that I can pick up off the top of my head, but I mean, having worked with, several different units with the Brits, the Kiwis, the Aussies, the Norwegians, the Germans, you kind of take away something. You take away at least one thing where you're like, oh, no way.
These guys do it right.
Yeah. And I don't mean in like a training environment. Hey, you went to, because you went to the Norwegian winter warfare course. Yeah. And so, I mean, of course you took things away from that, but I'm talking about when you were training or deployed with these folks, and they're learning stuff from you, the Canadians, they're learning stuff from you. You're learning stuff from them. It's just little takeaways. And it's not some mind blowing, I mean, that's kind of mind blowing, but in a way that, like, it's simple, but it's like that could save your life.
Oh yeah.
Some of the other things are just kind of the way you may wear your kit, or
I was going to say that same thing.
I mean, it's
you look at somebody else, you're like, oh, that's a really smart way to set that kit up, or that's a really smart way. The Brits you mentioned, but they had their medical response team, so they called it the MERT. So, and it was essentially those dudes were on a 46, and it was like, sauce tea, but they would fly on. They could do surgery, they could pass blood, they could do whatever. But we learned things from them. Like, we shared a wall with them in Bastion, and we worked with them pretty frequently. And it would be a thing where you'd go on and you'd look how they set their helicopter up. You're like, oh, that's pretty smart. Or they would be like, hey, why do you do this? And we would explain it. They'd be like, oh, that's a pretty smart way to do it. Yeah. So yeah, I initially looked at this question, and I was like, I don't know if there's value in that question. But the more that I thought about it, I was like, you take a lot from your partner forces. But again, it's sharing TTP. It's the same. I've taken stuff from Marines and Army Rangers and everybody that we work with, and partner forces are no different. So yeah.
No, not at all. I mean, that's why we do these joint and combined training.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it's shared shared info, shared TTPs, all across the board.
Yeah.
Highly valuable.